And we are back. European football is back. The Champions League is back, which means that once again we are bringing back the European football predictions series. For those of you who don't know how I do this, basically I will do all my predictions for today's games now. Then tomorrow morning I will do another video at the same time for the 8 games being played tomorrow. And then on Thursday I will be doing a quick fire video for all 31 remaining games in the Europa League and Europa Conference League. So if you haven't done so already, please do drop a like on this video for the return of European football and the return of the European prediction series. And make sure you are subscribed to the channel as well. We've had a lot of great support over the last few weeks with the return of the new season. So thank you very much for all your support once again. And like I say, please do consider subscribing to the channel. And let's just get straight in to the Champions League. And in classic UEFA fashion, we are, of course, not starting with groups A, B, C and D. We are starting with E, F, G and H because that's just how UEFA tend to do things. So we'll kick things off with Group E and the game between Feyenoord and Celtic. Now, both sides, of course, the champions of their respective divisions coming in from last season. Celtic, the Scottish League champions, and Feyenoord, the Dutch League champions. Now, Feyenoord have let a fair few players go this season, but they are still performing at a very high level in the Eredivisie, and obviously Celtic are doing what they do, which is beating every single team in Scotland. They have Brendan Rodgers back. They have, of course, failed to pick up a single win in last year's Champions League, and I've got to be honest with you, I look at this group and I do fear for Celtic once again. I have to look at the form and say that Feyenoord are still performing at a very high level, so I would expect them on paper to be a better team than Celtic, and I'm going to give them a 3-1 win tonight, but who knows? Maybe this is Celtic's opportunity and Brendan Rodgers' opportunity to put his stamp back on Celtic because they were very good under him the last time around. The other game in the group sees Lazio taking on Atletico Madrid in a game that I probably would have gone for a Lazio win if it wasn't for the fact that a lot of Lazio's key players have left in the summer, none more so than Milinkovic-Savic making his way to Saudi Arabia. They have signed some fairly decent replacements, the likes of Daichi Kamada from Eintracht Frankfurt, but I just don't think it's going to be enough to see off Atletico Madrid. Now, granted, Atletico Madrid had made a good start to the season, but were beaten 3-0 by Valencia at the weekend. So their usual stern defence was breached quite a few times at the weekend. So it does kind of throw this result sort of up in the air a little bit. I can't really split them right now, so I'm going to go for a 1-1 draw. On to everyone's favourite group in the Champions League this year. It is Group F between AC Milan, Newcastle, PSG and Borussia Dortmund. The aptly named Group of Death, however, you could really call it the group of not really started as well as we all thought they would this season. AC Milan had made a good start to the season and then were thumped 5-1 by local rivals Inter at the weekend. Newcastle with only 2 wins from their first 5 games. PSG with 2 draws, 2 wins and a loss, and Dortmund with 2 wins and 2 draws. It's not been a very good start for any of these sides this season, so it makes this already incredibly difficult group to predict even more difficult to predict. So we'll start off with the early game today, which is AC Milan and Newcastle. Obviously not at the San Siro as it gets its renovations sorted. I have a really sneaky feeling that Newcastle might just nick this. And that might be my English bias. And I want to see Newcastle do well because I've not really got too much against Newcastle. Obviously, I hope the likes of Manchester City and Liverpool, when they're in these big European competitions as a Man United fan, I hope they lose. But I'm not too fussed if Newcastle do pretty well. Obviously, don't want them to win the whole thing. But I'd like to see them do well in this group. And like I say, I watched that Milan game at the weekend and Inter were far superior to AC Milan. And what was interesting is it was the midfield battle, and with Newcastle taking Sandro Tonali from AC Milan, it's really made that midfield weaker. And I just think if Newcastle can get that midfield working with Bruno, with Joelinton, with Tonali, I think you could see Newcastle win that battle in midfield today. And I think they've got enough quality in the attacking areas to hurt Milan. And even though Milan have a real threat going the other way, I'd love to see the battle between Leao and Trippier, but I'm going to give it 2-1 Newcastle. And that might be a really controversial thing to say. And if this is the one time I go for a little bit of English bias and Milan win it easily, I'll obviously bear that in mind when we get to the PSG and Dortmund games. But as things stand right now, I think Newcastle might just nick it. The other game this evening is, of course, PSG and Borussia Dortmund. And I've already spoken about how these two sides have started the season. And with that said, I think what we could be in for is an incredibly high-scoring game where essentially this could just be anything. Like I say, PSG lost at the weekend. They lost 3-2. Borussia Dortmund drew, I think, 2-2 for the second week running because there's just goals going in left, right, and centre in games with these two teams involved. So with the Champions League lights on, maybe they'll be a little bit more stern, or maybe they'll just be even more attacking and even more open, and it could be an even more high-scoring game. I'm going to go 3-2 to PSG, purely because they're the home side. But like I say, they lost 3-2 at home to Nice at the weekend, so we just don't know. This could be a really fun one. It's probably going to be the best game to watch tonight, but I'm going to go for 3-2 to PSG. On to Group G, coming from PSG. We start off with Young Boys taking on RB Leipzig. And as much as I was impressed with Young Boys last season, they put in some fairly decent performances against Manchester United and Real Sociedad in the Europa League. I just don't think they've got what it takes to compete at this level, with the greatest of respect to them. Leipzig have had a mixed start to the season as well. They've been either scoring goals for fun or letting in goals for fun. So again, we could see a pretty open game in this one, but I think quality on the pitch dictates that Leipzig are going to take this one. I'm going to go for 2-0 to Leipzig. They are missing a few players through injury as well, so I think that will play into their team selection, but I'm going to go for 2-0 to Leipzig to kick off Group G. And in the other game in Group G, it is Manchester City against Zvezda. I can't really say their name properly. The old Red Star Belgrade. I don't think there's going to be any surprises when I say I think Manchester City are probably going to win this one. I think it's just going to be a case of how many. I think this could be a little bit of a shock to the system for Red Star. I'm going to go 6-0 Man City. That might be a little bit harsh, but you got to look at the quality. They're the defending champions. They've essentially got no pressure on them anymore now that they've won the Champions League. They've been already scoring goals for fun in the Premier League against, with the greatest respect to Red Star, again, teams that are better than Red Star already. So I just think Manchester City will take this one at an absolute canter. They may ease off when they get to like 2 or 3, but I just think they could really set a marker for their defence tonight, and I'm going to go for 6-0 to Manchester City. The final group then is, of course, Group H, and we start off with Barcelona against New Boys Royal Antwerp. Now, for those of you who don't know Royal Antwerp, very historical Belgian club, have had some very good success over the last few years and are housing a fair few Tottenham former players. I wanted to say has-beens, but I think has-beens would be a bit harsh. They've got the likes of Toby Alderweireld in their ranks. Vincent Janssen, remember him? He is their star striker, but as much as I'd like to see them pull off a result tonight against Barcelona, Barcelona have really started this season on the front foot. The integration of João Felix at the weekend for his debut really looked like it worked off. They won 5-0 against a very good side in Real Betis, so I think this could be a very long night for Royal Antwerp. They're a good team, they're a well-organised team, but I think Barcelona are going to have far too much quality. I'm going to go for 3-0. I very almost went for 4 or 5, but I'm going to be a bit respectful, but I think this could be a really good showing for Barcelona tonight, but I'm just going to go for 3-0. And then finally, it is Shakhtar Donetsk taking on Porto. This game is being played in Hamburg, obviously due to everything going on in Ukraine. Could be an interesting one. Shakhtar, of course, have lost players over the last few years, again, due to everything that is going on. So they're not as strong as you would expect them to be. They normally tend to get through the groups in the Champions League, or at least put up some very decent fights. But like I say, their team has got slightly weaker over the course of the last 12 months. And Porto have got a very good team themselves. Have let a couple of players go to Saudi Arabia themselves, but I think they've adequately replaced them. And I think Porto are probably going to be the favourites for tonight's game. I'm going to go for 2-1 to Porto. And that will round off today's predictions. Thank you very much for watching as always. Let me know down in the comment sections all of your thoughts for tonight's games and how excited you are for the return of the Champions League. I will see you tomorrow morning for the second 8 games being played, where we have to talk about Manchester United and Bayern Munich. I'll see you then.